Welcome to the quiet little corner of YouTube called Brother Owl's Garden. I'm Brian and I honor your presence today. I also want to give a very special and warm shout out and warm hello and greetings to Alona in Toscana, Rafael in Chiang Mai, and Daniel in Colombia. And I have a wonderful welcome again to the one and only Dale Allen Hoffman, who is with us today. Dale, welcome and thank you.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm all right. I'm all right. We're straddling these time zones again. Good thing you're not on the West Coast, like we were saying before.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really great to see you, and I appreciate, like all our viewers do, that you've come to share of yourself, your many gifts, and we're going to be speaking today about something that people can add to their own practice, and something that's pretty simple and straightforward, and that would be a term that you yourself have coined, Aramaic toning. And that begs the obvious for the initiate to this topic. What does Aramaic toning mean? What's that all about?
Well, it's even more simple to just start by looking at the word toning,
Mhm.
which is kind of I don't know if it's kind of another way of saying intonation is really what would be a little more accurate, which starts bringing in like the influence. I just actually happen to have go off slightly off camera here, a book that was a huge influence on me. Well, this is, one of many from Yogananda. It's called Cosmic Chants.
All right.
Um, and this, it's devotional singing in the way that he, speaks of that. But the toning is a little less, we've got kirtan where you have, mantra is a little different, but kirtan where there's usually a phrase that's repeated over and over again that's sung. Intonation is the difference between, let's say that, just using a word in English. I've never used this word before to tone, but just to give you an idea, you could say the word dog, or here's what intonation or toning is: dog. And all of a sudden you can have a profound experience with
Mhm.
that. So I'll use an Aramaic word. First word of the Aramaic Lord's Prayer is Abvun. If you go way into the west, it's Abvunach. If go more into the east, it's Aun. And if you say Aun, that's one thing. If you tone it just like this, you don't have to last forever, turn blue, and fall over. But the key is that for me, I've never encountered another technology, working with breath work for 30 years, toning, prayer, meditation, nothing that will shift the state of your awareness, the state of your being, and your sense of presence quicker for a newbie than anything other than toning. Sure, if you've been meditating for decades, you can get yourself into that place in a couple of seconds. But for somebody that's never done anything before, just a simple oh, and I feel very different than I did, much more open, much more flowing than I did just before making. It would have been even more profound if I hadn't done those first tones first. And I started investigating that and looking deeper into a lot of ancient languages, and it's like, oh, so little did I know that the Aramaic was very much a tonality language, as is the Hebrew, the basis of Arabic, the Semitic languages specifically. But also you can go across into Egyptian. Obviously, it's there in Hindi languages and Sanskrit. And I started looking deeper into the Aramaic and started having these vibrational relationships with the teachings. This was just around the same time that, Sadi Neal, Douglas Klotz, one of my teachers, had started coming out with a lot of his work as well. And he doesn't do the toning per se. He does something called body prayers, which are sort of you take some lines of whatever it may be, whether it's from Sufism, from Christianity, and sing and sort of intone those. and it gets them into the, into the energy body in a whole different way from having that cognitive relationship of looking at words on the page or speaking it, like the way I grew up in the Methodist church, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, which felt dead to me when I was 5, and it felt dead to me when I was 10, and it felt dead to me when I was 15, which is funny because it's what drove me further into trying to find
Yeah.
the essence that lit me up, and the toning does that. So
Well, wow. As my memory seems to dull as I approach my later 20s. I wish I could remember each and every point that pops up as you speak things, but I'll just kind of buckshot a response if I could. First of
oh,
all,
I never heard that before. That's a great buckshot of response.
yeah, yeah, and that just happened. So here we go with the blast. I think what you're saying in your words, but as I'm grokking it, and processing through, is basically you're taking you're taking a word, a logos, and you are honing into its frequency. And it's not any longer just a pronunciation of syllables. You're letting the soul of the word vibe out through you.
Yes.
And yes, absolutely. I mean, um, I'll tell you something. How can I say this? At a time in my life when a certain type of prayers were burned out and done, I received a gift from somebody that is connected directly to that. And I was like, it's like saying, just when I gave up drinking, you bought me beer of the month club. And it was like, I couldn't believe the timing. And anyway, what it led to later, as you realize things later, looking back on them, I realized the meaning of it later, and I went back with a fresh set of eyes, kind of like you with the Lord's Prayer. It had become inert to you, the way that it was gravely mistranslated. Let's be honest about that. You knew that that was just inert, okay? And so, but you went back to it and you made it your own in a new way, from a new perspective, with a new understanding. And the same thing happened to me. And I'll just conclude that part of the buckshot with, when I do those prayers, I finish with singing. I don't speak it. I don't say yada 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 amen thing. I sing, and the singing is not really a melody or a song the way it's done. So it's
Hmm.
very close. I identify that as very close to the principle that you're identifying now. Um, Another part of the buckshot response here is that, as you touched on already, certain languages have a quality of intonation. And what I'll say, and I'm sure this is what you meant, but I'll just say it in a way that I processed it. For example, Chinese or Thai is a tonal language where if you say the correct pronunciation but with the incorrect tone, they will have literally no idea what you're talking about. It's
Mm.
it's it's off the grid. Although when they record, songs, pop songs and stuff, there's no tones at all, and they understand every word. So there's a mystery for you. But
Yeah.
if you get the tone wrong, you're saying something nonsensical, and they very well may not even know what you're talking about. But a step further with the tonal quality of languages is to give credit to Sanskrit in particular. Sanskrit is believed to have been based on the actual root, innate root sacred tones of the human body itself. It's
Yes.
not something like a set of tones that we learn to emulate and even vibrate with. It's a language that includes or is derived from the actual tonalities that are sacred and innate within the body. So it's like, ergonomic language in that sense.
Oh, absolutely. The interesting thing about Sanskrit is they, let's just take an idea like ohm, which would be not to be confused with ohm, which is a whole different sound entirely, but just like the ohm,
Tibetan.
at the top. And intriguingly, and it's funny because I'm looking sideways at my Sanskrit, my chakra banner over here, and I see Om at the top. And the way that the teachings express that is that the sound came from what we would see with our visual eye from the natural cymatic visual of that that Om symbol that we would think of, at least in the West, as a symbol, but it actually came out of what creates that pattern. If you were obvious, and this is in my book, it's in Echoes of an Ancient Dream, where you take, whatever, clean sand,
Oh yeah,
and you put it
exactly.
on a drum head and you have certain frequencies resonating. I'll say that the best representation I've ever seen was Nigel Stanford's video called Cymatics. It's on YouTube. It's incredible. And he takes all these different frequencies, but they had said that the different tonalities, yes, of Sanskrit came from not even just the body, but the natural empathetic vibrations of life itself. And it's interesting because Aramaic is also incredibly profound, but Aramaic is a little bit different in the sense that I don't feel personally that it goes back to such a natural root.
Hmm.
And I say that openly, yet at the same time, the tones and the letters all were represented also with hand signals that are natural expressions that humans make, even if they're born blind. So, I mean, it's interesting how, like, the
Yeah,
letter
we're
pay, the original letter pay, if you're looking at my hand in this direction, it kind of looks like that, and pay means mouth. Zion, which would look like that, literally means to project or to reach out. So, all these different, Aleph, the first letter, was like a circle with horns, and it meant ox. What is the ox? Well, the ox was pride, and that's the sound ah, a, or silence. Intriguingly, usually if it's in the middle of a word, it's not sounded. It allows movement, like berashit, not berashit, but berashit. It's there in the middle, Beit Resh Aleph Shin Yod Tav, but it's not actually in tone. It's not sounded.
yeah.
But anyway, the going back to the ox to stay focused, the ox was an animal that was and still is prized as having tremendous strength, especially in agriculture. And what was intriguing about it was they didn't just prize it because it had strong shoulders or legs or, like I say, haunches or anything like that, but that they knew that its tremendous strength existed only when it was in a state of absolute wholeness.
Mm. I
So
need
that
to
true
add something
strength
to that.
exists only in wholeness, in non-division, which is kind of an oxymoronic word. Oxymoronic, I just made a new word. But when you're exemplifying the sound of ah or the sound of silence, cue Simon and Garfunkel, that you were actually bringing that into being. So it's similar to Sanskrit. It doesn't quite go. When I started realizing that about Sanskrit and people were giving me all these books, say 20 years ago, my mind was boggled. I was like, wow, like, look at this.
Mm.
So yeah,
Well,
powerful stuff. But when we look at the Bible and in all the English, none of that's there. It's dead.
no, 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 no. Two things. I have to add this in because you're touching on something that's been a personal experience of mine here in Thailand. Water buffalo. I live in the rural, way rural part of Thailand. I'm nowhere near anything you'd see pictures of. Okay,
Mhm,
and water buffalo all around. They used to be sacred, not quite Hindu level, but sacred.
mhm,
They would even have a festival once or possibly twice, I think, a year where they honored the water buffalo to whom their lives were tethered because your water buffalo fail, you don't have crops, you're dead. So they revered them. But what I've noticed about the local water, there's a hot springs not too far from me, and there's water buffalo all in a marshy field that's next to it. And every time I go there, Dale, the most prominent impression that I get when I see them is that they are grounded. They are the most
mhm,
grounded animal I've ever seen. And so, yeah, they're powerful and they're strong. Yes, that's when they're virtue is engaged for our service, frankly,
Mm.
but with gratitude. But what I see when I see them just hanging out and being water buffalo, wow, they're just so incredibly grounded and root chakra'd out. And some people might think it's a little odd or whatever, but I'll be honest with you, every time I see one, I look them right because they will be looking right into your eyes, by the way. And I just give them a little bit of an honoring gesture, and here it's called a Y. And so I totally relate. The second real quick thing is, and my viewers will attest to this. I'm very often mentioning that language always falls short. Language always misconstrues. Language is always a step off, at least, from the essence, the it that we're experiencing, and then trying to put labels on and describe and transfer to somebody else's consciousness. But having said that, there are some aspects of language that are a lot closer, and I think that that's what you're dealing with.
Mm. Yeah, it's well, a big distinction would be, as an example, from the Koine Greek logos. We there's this huge misperception in modern times that logos, let's just put it this way, a word on a page cannot be a logos. That would be Lexus or Lego, which
Mm,
is essentially a fragmented manifest representation. You could even say archetype of the actual logos, which is that resonant vibrational experience itself. Same with an Aramaic, that word is milta. Ta genders it feminine. What does that mean? That means that it's an attitude or a state of being. It's not something you can hold in your hand. It's more a perception of that. I say a lot of times, here I've got a pencil. So my view of this pen, or the pencil itself, is masculine. It's very obvious. I can show it to somebody. My perception of it is feminine. I can't show someone that perception. I can't even fully explain my perception because I can only explain it in a masculine sense, which means a fragmented, projected, almost like an arc of electricity, which would be more of a masculine expression, versus magnetism, who nests in upon herself, which is more of an actual direct
yeah,
experience. Well,
yin and
to
yang.
say
Yeah.
that the word of God, as an example, like a word written on a page in a Bible is the word of God, was considered to be a blasphemy, because you're plucking something. It's like taking the reed flute and plucking it from the mud. You're pulling it out of that bed that is its source of life. And when you do that, you essentially kill it, and it becomes a dead thing that we now have a relationship with. And then you start, even just me, common sense, at the age of 7 years old, I'm going, look, everybody told me this is the inerrant word of God. And I'm saying to my grandmother, why? I think we talked about this on the last
Hmm.
get together. It's like, why then do all these five say something very different? And this is supposed to be inerrant. Nobody could actually answer. They would spout theology and Bible verses out at me. And I'm like, well, if you're going to spout Bible verses at me and call it the word of God, what you're telling me is you can't answer the question.
Yeah,
You can only repeat archetypes. You can only repeat concepts. You can only repeat Legos. You can only
yeah,
repeat little pieces of a puzzle that's experiential that you don't understand. And
yeah.
somehow, when I'm 7 years old, I already got that. It was when I finally, and studying, Greek for a while and Hebrew, but it was the Aramaic where I finally went, whoa. And then that's also when I went back to the Hebrew and went,
Mhm.
whoa, and realized it was there too. I just wasn't looking at it in such a way. So.
Well, it's interesting that you say at 7 years old you were able to come up with that, but it's a matter of personal beliefs. But I would posit that you brought that here, but it was
Yeah, and it's
quite
an
ready to be
interesting
right.
it's an interesting ripeness,
Right.
like fertility of fruit in the present moment, that it's like I tell people all the time, I would never ever have picked a Christocentric philosophy to become so passionate about, although that's where my passion is. And I really I absolutely brought that with me, into 3D.
Hmm.
And it's interesting. And the reason I say I would have never chosen it isn't because it's not beautiful, isn't because it's not incredible. It's because the most difficult thing about what I do, funny, like 2 weeks ago, this Facebook post came up from 2011. So it was like 11 years ago. And it said, people ask me all the time, what's the hardest part of what you do? And I actually screenshot it, but I chose not to share it. It was, it's dealing with the ignorance, people's ignorance. And that doesn't mean stupidity. It's that they don't know that they don't know, especially in terms of the Holy Bible. Most of the people that are out there spouting all this stuff about it don't know anything about its sources. They don't know anything about its creation. It's nothing, actually nothing. I'll say virtually nothing. And it's funny, like the only way I was able to learn all of it was to almost die to myself over and over and
Hmm.
over again. Ultimately, all those conceptual layers had to come off until I was left with what was
Yeah.
real. And that realization that what you're looking for is what is looking. And that brings me back again to the
Yeah.
tones. It brings me back to that, not the
I,
concept.
I would just chime in fairness. I think that what you've observed regarding Christians vis-a-vis the Christian canon would apply to all traditional institutionalized religions and their sacred texts. It's not just the
Yeah. Well,
Christianity
here in the
looking
West, it
out.
tends to be pretty intense with Christianity because, and Islam also
Yeah,
is that intense.
yeah,
And Judaism can also be that intense. Funny, the three Abrahamic religions
yeah.
are the ones that are most thoroughly threaded into politics. And that's an interesting, especially here in the West. It's like it's I'll say something, or it's why I haven't done much on social media in years. I'll put something out there, and I can see from all the responses that almost nobody understood what I said, because and it's this human thing we do. It had to go through our filtration. It had to go through our BS, our belief systems. It had to rattle our cages of indoctrination and conditioning, and I understand that. And I'm there for the people that are willing to go past that. But at first hearing of that, when the door first pops open, if someone hears something I said or one of my videos or an event, the first thing that usually comes out is this tremendous hostility.
Yeah,
And if there's anything I've had to learn over the years, it's being open and not biting the hook and staying in that place of love
right,
and
right.
understanding that I had a little hostility too when I started realizing these things. Fortunately, I was young. I wasn't like 40, 50, 60, having been bred in that all the time. And people come to me now and they're like, can we take it? They want to do like one-on-one mentoring with me. And they're like, can we start really slow? I'm like, we can go at
Hmm.
whatever you feel is your pace.
Yeah,
Because if we go too quick or I try to shatter your whatever I think is this or that, it becomes destructive.
yeah. I
And
mean,
because
we
that's how
need
we
to
relate
meet.
with the world is with the BS. So,
I like that. But we need to, all of us need to meet people where they are, which may be up here from our perspective too, by the way, to
mhm.
include that. But also people can only people can only receive and understand at the level that they're at now. And again,
Mhm.
I repeat that that's not always down there. I mean that we don't want spiritual vanity to contaminate this
Yeah.
point that we're speaking about. But yeah, I totally get that. And I think that at a certain point, you said the hardest part is dealing with the ignorance of people, the especially when it's the ignorance, you know.
Yeah, it's not stupidity. They just
Yeah.
don't know.
And I wanted to add, you said, they don't know that they don't know. There is something worse than that, and it's called think that you know when you don't know. That's even worse because someone who doesn't know they don't know,
It is.
there's potential there for light to shine and for awakening to happen. But when you are absolutely positively certain that you know it all when you don't, you're
And
you're gone.
that right there is the core of the challenge of what I do. Yeah. And I know it. I know, and I'll tell people, okay, I'll come somewhere and I'm gonna talk for 30 minutes. I want you to do your best to be aware of the rise and fall of your breath. Do not try to understand what I'm telling you. This is being recorded, okay? I don't want you to try to understand and keep up with me because what's going to happen is you'll get buried in the first 2 minutes. I can promise that. Now, if you're able to be open with me and feel that you're going to feel burning and effervescence moving through your system, you're going to feel all these different emotions moving. Just sit with me, be with me, try to stay conscious in your breath without understanding what I'm saying. At the end of that 30 minutes, you may go, I have no clue what you said, but I feel that they'll come up to me. I feel this tremendous shift.
Yeah.
Then I know
There you
that
go.
they were truly listening. And then I'm like, now go get the recording and listen back to it like 100 times, because
Yeah.
that's when you're going to hear what I'm saying. That's when you're going to integrate and understand. We do that in the mentoring. I record everything so that, and I tell people, you're going to hear things on the playback that you did not hear in the moment,
Right. Right.
and that allows them to take it. I wish somebody would have done that for me as I was
Yeah.
growing up, but
I
it
think
was
that's really
kind of
great, Dale.
like,
It's like
it was like
you're
keep up or get out is what it was.
well,
So
you're giving it to them in two layers, but not at once. You're it's as if you're giving it to them in the unfiltered, meaning you're not judging, you're not questioning, you're not intellectualizing, you're just receiving it in the, maybe in the deeper consciousness. And then later, now that you've got that, humming, and that's been laid out, now you can go and kind of pick at things that maybe intellectually would have thrown you off the
mhm.
tracks during the presentation itself. Yeah, I think that's a really good method.
Yeah, I pretty much will let them know what's happening here isn't the words I'm using. Actually, it's the essence of the energy and the resonance that's going on right here. It's
Right.
that. But there is that textual layer of that. But I do my best to keep people from trying to grab that. It's why I actually tone before any talk that I give. There's several reasons. One is because if I didn't, I would. I'm like a rock star about to go out into a football stadium full of 80,000 people. There's that much energy coursing through me, and the toning allows me to not come out and blast out like Zeppelin, but
Mm,
instead allow that energy to be
yeah.
much,
Yeah.
very open, very to be very mindful, so that before I even start teaching in that sense, the space is open, and we have that. People would say a cleansing or a clearing, and for me, it's not so much a cleansing. It's more just an awareness that, it was never contaminated in the first place, the essence of the energy, and being able to come from that. And then I'm able to start mindfully in what I'm sharing, and people can be with me in a sense. Like, usually if somebody has never heard, as an example, like something toned in Aramaic or spoken, it's pretty often that people will burst out in tears. People will literally have their face in their hands and be sobbing.
Yeah,
They
because we're
some will
being reached and affected in a way that is way deep into the
Absolutely. Some
unconscious.
will just burst out laughing.
Yeah.
They'll just burst out in laughter. Some will fall on the floor and go into flight of the spirit. And it's what's interesting is, for me, over all these years of expressing that, my job, when all these things are happening, is just to stay with what, the fertility and the ripeness of what's coming through, regardless of what happens around. And it's
Yeah.
funny that the toning gets me in that place, so that when I get to the part of the actual spoken teachings, I'm able to stay there and be there.
Yeah.
Because people will occasionally, it's pretty rare now, but people will occasionally just, whatever. Somebody read one book, so they're an expert, and those kinds of they'll, bless their hearts, I love them dearly, but they'll sort of stand up and try to challenge all these different things. And it's interesting if someone, any kind of a question in an event or whatever, I'm not like, I'm doing what I can to not formulate anything, because you kind of get, there's so many things, places you could go. But when I can tell that they're finished, as long as they're not one of those long-winded sort of run on forever ones, then when that space is there, I'm still in that open space, and whatever needs to come out comes out.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that there might not be something that they said, that there's a couple of things hanging in there, and I'll come out in that framework. But 20 years ago, some people would sort of challenge things that I would say, and I would take it personally. And I
Mhm.
realize, even for them it feels personal, but in a way it's not really impersonal. It's the impersonal conditioning that we sort of hold over top of the present moment. And if I bite back on that kind of if I bite back at all, but if I come back on that level, then nothing's gained. And
Yeah.
it was a lesson that took me years to learn, of being
Yep.
able to speak with someone. I can go into a standard Christian church, praise and worship, wash in the blood of Christ, and I can have a great time.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
you
I
know,
did an episode um, with a real brother of mine, Bob Belcher, in Hawaii, and the name of this episode, and I encourage everyone to look at it and view it if you haven't seen it yet. It's called "Agreed Upon Realities." Agreed upon realities, and in a nutshell, what agreed upon realities refers to is what you said, the BS. It's your chosen or accepted and indoctrinated beliefs. Wherever you got them doesn't matter. You're hanging on to them. I like to use the metaphor of somebody gets busted for having drugs in their car, and you've seen the cops shows, videos, and everything. Oh, officer, that's not mine. That's not mine. Somebody must have put that there. That's not mine. I don't care. Possession is 9/10 of the law. In other words, you're the one holding them. They're yours. So agreed upon realities goes a lot deeper than that. I believe whatever to such an extent that I actually self identify with those beliefs. That's why people say, I am Muslim. I am Buddhist. I am Jehovah's Witness, whatever. I am blah, 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 whatever. Really? That's what you are? But yeah, I am, and when someone comes along like a Dale Allen Hoffman, who's going to come, bam, and directly challenge that with other, just other, it's going
mhm,
to frighten them, I should say, threaten them to a
mhm,
point where they will become defensive, in some cases, fiercely so. And when you get a real extreme uh, kind of person with this, they will act out a need to eliminate you,
mhm,
not just disagree with you. You need to be eliminated because you are threatening my existence, because I am that belief. And so someone like you comes along, shakes them up. There was also another bearded fellow that wandered around shaking things up a few years back, and yeah, he needed to be gotten rid of because he was directly threatening their belief systems and their matrix, their way of running things, their established systems. And so that's what people do when they're blind to the fact that I am the I am, not
mhm.
I am those beliefs that were drilled into me at a young age, or that I choose to hang on to, violently even. So yeah, but
Yeah,
you
it's
learned you
interesting.
learned to
I've had
detach
death
from it as
threats.
well. You learned to detach yourself personally from their attack. So you see that you overcame.
Well, it's interesting. Like, I had to be able to stay conscious, keep my breath moving, and I literally, it would be a visual experience, and on some level in my visual field, where I would actually see parts of myself burning in flames as they were projecting things, and I was okay with that. I had to learn to be okay with that rather than the fight, because if there's anything that's real, it can't be burned away in that sense. It was something that I learned, that there was a healing process in it. I remember this one, bless his heart, sort of a not so sacred clown from Virginia that used to like harass me and all kinds of people, Rocco, Erico, my friend Christopher on YouTube and all the different social medias. And one particular day, said something. I posted something on my friend Christopher's wall. By the way, look out! This guy has been going after me for years. He's full of it. And then all of a sudden, within 60 seconds, I got a message that said my YouTube account there was a hacking attempt. Somebody tried to get into it, my Google. So it was interesting. They gave me the IP address. They gave me the exact computer the person was using, the model. and the update numbers. It gave me the browser they were using. So at the time, there was the Internet Crime Data Unit from the FBI. I dumped that all into there, and you'd put the IP address in it. It would show you the GPS coordinate of where it was located, the computer.
Wow.
So it
Wow.
gave me the town of, I think, Reston, Virginia.
Mhm.
And then I started going, wait a second, that guy, his name was like, what, Christopher Bradley or
A
something. I don't remember
troll.
what it was. So I searched for him in that area, found it was the apartment complex where the GPS was. It gave me his apartment number, his phone number, the manager's number. It said that he lived with his mommy and his sister. It was just an interesting thing. And then I posted like on my friend's wall, here's all the guy's info, minus his apartment number, minus the last four of his telephone. This is the computer he used. Here's his browser. Here's his IP address. And then all of a sudden, for the next couple hours, we watched him deleting all these bad comments. But he also got me on Facebook. I still have the message, and I've screenshot it because he has this profile that's full of all. I think we may have actually talked about this. This other guy's Adam Brody, who's like a Jewish actor. But the interesting thing was he asked me, "Look, can I ask you a question? Here's the interesting part. Which God are you serving?" Like it was a multiple choice question. Like you have this, it's almost like this Greek panoply of gods that you can kind of pick the one you want. And I was like, just that right there, I realized, wait a second. So if he thinks there's multitudes of gods to pick from, then he doesn't understand what Allah in Aramaic was in the beginning, what Yeshua taught, which was the absolute only being, which is all is within that one, that absolute. And anything that births itself out from that has to have an imperfection, and at least an appearance of an imperfection, because that's the only way that an absolute can experience itself, is by breaking itself into pieces. But then it's not, I am what I believe. I am not American. I am not this, whatever your skin color is or your religion, whatever.
Yeah.
Sort of Rene Descartes, I think, therefore I am. It's like, no, 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 no.
Oh yeah.
But
What
getting
a
to that
train
place
wreck he
where
put
you
upon our
realize,
culture.
well, yeah, well, that's the supra-rational enigma that Aurobindo would call, the ego, which is a Greek word, koine, Greek, individualized self, which isn't a bad thing. We've turned it into a bad thing, but it's not. That keeps you from walking in the traffic. That keeps you from, stepping off of the 30th floor of a building. The ego is not a bad thing. It's just learning to be able to have a relationship that's much more calibrated to the absolute truth. And it doesn't exist in the concept of religion, only in the path that a religion is seeking to reveal, which
Hmm.
is the path we're already on. It's not
Yeah.
something else or something
Yeah.
outside. It's being conscious of what's happening right now.
Yeah. That's why I like
And
to say
big
that
difference.
nothing that religions do offer a lot of good things, despite what else anyone may think, feel, say, or conclude about them. But I've come to the realization that none of it is proprietary.
Mm,
Okay. Yes, you can get it from there. No, it is not owned by that and not only available there. No. And no, you don't need it to go get it anyway. It's already
mm.
in you. It's real. It's a matter of realization. But Dale, can you give us a little more of a sampling of your Aramaic toning? Now that we've kind of covered so much of the background, could you could you possibly give us, a nice dose of what it is that
Of course. Yeah. Well, I mean, I can go in any direction. One of my, sorry about this. Jeez. It seems to be one of those mornings where,
Life is happening.
wait for the phone. Okay. Um, one of the most profound, actually, this is often a tone that I'll put at the end um, of a lot of toning circles that I'll do, where we're doing toning for like an hour and a half or something. And then I like to put this one at the end. It's the word, in Aramaic, it's rucha.
Right.
In Hebrew, it's ruach. It's ruch in Arabic. But the sound that I love to tone is ruah, ruah. Now, it's the word for spirit. Technically, it means an elemental force. So what that actually is breath, more accurately. So when you see Jesus talking about spirit, they wouldn't have understood spiritus because Latin wasn't in that region.
Right.
They would have understood breath. Far different. Gravity, magnetism, electromagnetism, even modern idea of nuclear forces would fit into that. But what I like to do is just a simple, I do toning where I go all over the place. I'll just tone for, just several repetitions. And of course, you can do this with me of just a simple tone, even without changing pitch, and just allowing you to hear just the sound ruah. And it's funny because when I hear ruah, it makes me think of Al Pacino in
Al
Scent of
Pacino,
a
Scent of
Woman,
a
where he's
Woman.
always
That
going,
had to
hoorah.
be said. We had to get that out.
Yeah, I was like, I had to get it out of there. So, okay. So, it's funny. Were you actually thinking that? No,
Of
but
course I was, but I thought I don't know when I'm going to be able to say that, or if it would
so
come
it's out of the
naturally.
way now.
Yeah, it's out.
Anyway,
Yeah.
in honor of Pacino, here goes. I'm just going to do it 3 times. So I'll
Okay.
make this a really basic, simple one.
All right.
Very simple representation. Now, just thinking of being aware of how I feel right now versus if I said ruah, 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 or even dumb it down more if I said spirit, spirit, spirit.
Right. Totally
There's no
different. And
comparison.
I'll vouch. Here we are talking other sides of the planet, electronically, whatever. I hope our viewers felt it. The entire ambiance shifted to that frequency, which was, I'll tell you, was very calming. Even though it might not be the most poetic word in the world, or
Mhm.
something lyrical or musical sounding, but it was that frequency that you toned with that word. It shifted the frequency, the ambiance that I was feeling here on the other side of the planet with you.
And I'm not aware of any other technology that'll do it that quickly, that'll affect the most people, especially people who have never been on any kind of, spiritual path.
Right.
People will be completely green and wander into the room of an event of mine, and as soon as that starts, they're sobbing. And
It's
as
impactful.
opposed to me as a kid, that with them spitting all these words out from the Bible and nice stories from biblical verses and
Yeah.
stuff. And it was a challenge to even stay awake. It
Yeah.
was such a blessing for me knowing I can go to the children's church Sunday school and get cookies and juice instead of having to keep my eyes pried open in the stinking pews. It was so just. It's funny, like Eddie Izzard, great comedian. He's an executive transvestite, he calls himself. He was like, Christians are like the only people in the world that can make a hallelujah not sound like a hallelujah. Hallelujah. Like this droll drone.
Yeah.
And I think back and I see that and I feel this imprisonment. And I look back at my family and my relatives in that little church in New Jersey. And they were beautiful people and they were incredible. But there was this like odd restraint that felt literally dead. It
Yeah.
felt dead
Yeah.
to me.
I don't know how much I really want to open up about all that, but I'll just say I totally get it. And it was also in New Jersey. No offense to New Jersey, but I look, I don't criticize or condemn anybody from any background of any kind, but and I've said I had a Roman Catholic background, and let's just say once you come to the what am I doing with all this phase of your chosen set of indoctrinations, whatever, whether it's Judaism, Islam, Catholicism, Buddhism, whatever it is, you are being colored by that consciously and unconsciously, most of it unconsciously. And so one time did you say you had a Methodist upbringing, was it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I had some friends who were Methodists, and they said, well, why don't you come to church with us? And I said, well, Yeah, okay, I will. I'm not gonna say no, I won't before I even, So yeah, I went to their church 3 times with them. Oof. At the end of it, at the end of the third time, they were like, "Okay, we're kind of ready to say, so what do you think?" And I said, "Okay, you're asking me what do I think of the service that I have experienced, not you and what you choose to believe, correct? Are we on the same page?" Yeah, and they were cool about it. And I said, "For me, I feel like it's spiritual kindergarten in a really cold, unheated, inert, I'll use that word again,
Hmm.
sterile environment." And I never realized how much
Hermetically
of
sealed,
yeah,
but
yeah,
not in the true hermetic
sterile,
sense, let me say.
sterile.
But
When I
yeah,
say inert, I'm meaning like sterile, like
yeah, yeah.
stale cracker kind of, I don't know how to say it. And I just said it had experiencing that, and I'm sorry, I'm not making fun of Methodists or
No, I know, I know.
I'm not. I'm just telling you an experience I had that I experienced. But I said, it makes me look back again at the Catholicism stuff and say, well, I think I actually like the structure and the chanting and the elements that I, was not really appreciating enough a lot more than I thought.
Hmm.
Not that I'm, wham, all the way, I'm not going to the Vatican tomorrow or anything like that. But wow. See, it's like when you go to the optometrist and they do that lens thing,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
this
yeah.
one or this one. Well,
Hmm.
each one kind of gives you a reference point. And I've been to Quaker. I've been to infinity of Buddhist temples in multiple countries. Um, been to a couple of mosques here and there. I walked into a mosque and made a fool of myself because I didn't at that time I didn't understand the protocol of
Mm.
washing your hands and feet and everything before you went in. And I asked permission from the imam who was there. Can I go in? But this was in Burma, and he was kind of like, I don't really know if I should tell you you can go in or not. I really don't know who you are. You're clearly not Muslim, but he was kind enough to let me in, but I made the mistake. I didn't know to do that. And I went and looked around. Well, it was just an empty prayer hall. There's not really anything in there. Take the rug out, it's empty.
Hmm.
And I came back out and I was like, okay, thanks. I just wanted to kind of get a feel for your place of worship. And then some of the younger boys that were there said, but you need to wash when you go in there, though. They were super nice about it. But yeah, my point is that we should all go and sample how other people are experiencing spirituality, uh, making their attempts to reconnect with the divine. But I love how
Absolutely.
simple and effective, and I'll use the word again, impacting the toning is that you just did for us. And I'm going to ask you if you could please give our viewers something to kind of take home with them, put in their pocket that they could use, maybe a very simple three,
Oh,
four, five
absolutely.
word, something they can kind of, get their feet wet and maybe start looking into this. And by the way, all of Dale's contact information is in the links, the description links below.
Cool. So yeah, for me, a really powerful word. The word, people have that word Lord, which has nothing to do with Christianity whatsoever. Lord comes
British
from
court,
an
British royal
it
courts.
comes from Hlufwerd was the actual word from feudalism. The actual word in Aramaic, funny, some scholars say Maria. It was not Maria. It's the wrong spelling. It was actually Maria. Maria is what the word Lord was. And of course, there's Adonai in
I thought it was
Hebrew.
mare,
What's that?
master. I thought it was
No,
mare,
Mare is
master,
no, that would be closer to Lord. That would be someone that has,
like master.
like you say, my Lord in medieval times. That
Yeah.
would be Mare. Maria is the Mar sound has an aspect of flowing expanse. Some can say water. It also meant bedrock of strength, whereas Ria, Rhea, Ora, Ra were all ancient Semitic tones that mean an expanding light.
Mm,
Rhea specifically, or Ria, is an expanding feminine light. So we have this bedrock of strength, flowing expanse, and this this expanding feminine light. And if you just make a tone, it doesn't matter what your pitch is. Different people's, like, your pitch will be lower in the morning, higher at night. That's why
Mhm,
my voice is a little cracky. It's morning for me,
mhm,
but you can do whatever you want with it.
mhm.
Just make that sound Maria. And the other thing is, be aware that even if you don't make the tone, if it's done in your awareness, you're still going to have an experience with it,
Yeah, you don't
because
have to
it's not the
actually
actual,
enunciate it.
it's not making the sound of it that is actually where the magic is. It's in our awareness of its fertility. So when you start realizing that someone, you can be caught in traffic and toning without even making the sound.
Sure.
And you'll go, oh, this stuff works even without
Yeah.
making the sound. Because I've done this with mute people, with I've done this with people who had deaf relatives, and I would actually lean against them and tone so that they could feel it. I've done this with blind people. It's amazing. Even people on respirators, they're like, is there a way that I can communicate to my father? He's not responding. And I'm like, all he has to do is bring this into his awareness. He doesn't have to make the sound. And when he came out, which was several weeks later, he's like, I was doing it. He said, I was doing that toning, even though I couldn't make the tone. Like, his consciousness, his conscious mind was not quite fully there, but his consciousness was aware. And when I heard that, I was like, whoo, that's
It's very
beautiful.
touching and
So
beautiful. Powerful.
incredible. So
I've always believed that, at least in
I
I
got to get going soon, though.
yeah.
But
I couldn't say in all cases, but in most cases, I believe that people who are in a coma are able to receive in the higher self level.
mm,
And I think that what you've done is beautiful, and I thank you so much for offering. I know that you've got another commitment right now, so we're gonna just say thank you for blessing us, and we really appreciate you, Dale, and everything that you've offered. And again, all Dale's contact information is in the description. You can follow up on him more. Dale, thank you,
awesome.
and love
Been
you, brother,
beautiful.
and have you back
My
again soon.
apologies for my battery dying and the phone going off. It's been like that the last couple of days. So
It's a miracle my internet lasted the whole thing. So yeah, it happens. All right, brother.
awesome.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye bye.